I've spent my accomplished action assertive, I wasn't racist while acting on racist assumptions. What would accomplish a acquaintance anxiety 911 on a wedding? Claiming assemblage action breadth there was abandoned love. A back Patricia Whitmore peered through her window that Saturday morning in Willowbrook Estates. She saw article that fabricated her claret boil. But what she didn't apperceive was that the atramentus benedict she was about to abode to the brand captivated abstruse that would change everything. As convoying cars amidst the anniversary with hands-on weapons and 60 bells guests froze in terror, one adumbration was about to transform a moment of abhorrence into article cipher saw coming. This is the abominable accurate adventure of how one woman's ageism collided with the accuracy, so able it fabricated alike the brand Admiral benumb in their tracks. Dear viewer, I humbly appeal you to watch or acquire till the end and amount this adventure out of 10. Your appraisement will advise me to accord you bigger acceptance in abutting videos. If you are watching my adventure for the Aboriginal time, subscribe this acceptance and columnist the anxiety amount now not to absence the notifications of my circadian arise new stories. Acknowledge you and let's dive into the abounding story. Patricia Whitmore prided herself on advancement standards in Willowbrook Estates. Every morning at absolutely 7 o'clock, she positioned herself at her bay window with a bleared cup of Earl Grey. Analysis the Aboriginal lawns and ecology any aberration from what she brash adequate adjacency conduct. The $60,000 advance to actualize this absolute ascertainment column had been annual every penny, she thought, adjusting her annual glasses to bigger analyze the abode abutting door. The acreage at 1847, Magnolia Drive had been on the bazaar for abandoned 2 weeks afore selling, and Patty hadn't managed to appropriately vet the new owners. This abortion nodded at her constantly. As Admiral of the Homeowners Affiliation for the accomplished 7 years, she brashed at her angelic assignment to bottle what she alleged the neighborhood's character. The antecedent owners, the Weatherbys, had been ideal neighbors, quiet, refined, and best importantly, they accepted the bond rules that absolute action in Willowbrook Estates. But today, article was awfully wrong. White rental chairs were actuality unloaded from a truck, and several adolescent atramentus men were accustomed them adjoin the backyard. Patty's fingers anchored about her ceramic beaker as she watched them ambience up what appeared to be row afterwards row of seating. A Belle's accomplished followed, busy with white roses and baby's breath. Her apperception raced with assumptions, anniversary added adverse than the last. She accomplished for her buzz and acceleration dialed her sister, Linda, who lived 3 houses down. Linda answered on the added ring, her articulation still befuddled from sleep. Patty didn't bother with pleasantries. Linda, you charged to see what's accident at the Magnolia house. I knew article was off a back they abashed in after most month. They about batten to anyone and now look, their ambience up for what appears to be some array of massive gathering. Linda's blow was oral through the phone. Patty, it's Saturday morning. Can't bodies acquire a Belle's in their own backyard? But Patty was already effective to her computer, affairs up the HOA bylaws on her screen. Section 7 Annex 3 acutely states that gatherings of added than 20 bodies crave above-mentioned approval from the board. I've accustomed no such request. Her fingers flew above the keyboard as she began basic and emergency email to the added Lath members. The new neighbors had been cautiously quiet aback effective in. The man she'd credible appeared to be in his 50s, consistently acid simple clothes. Annihilation that adapted he belonged in an adjacency breadth the boilerplate home amount exceeded $800,000. She approved to analysis them online, but activate decidedly little. This abridgment of advice abandoned fueled her suspicions. In her experience, bodies with annihilation to adumbrate didn't alive so privately. Added cartage began arriving, and Patty noticed several of them were earlier models, absolutely not the affluence cars about credible in Willowbrook. A van with Carter's adaptable DJ casework corrective on the ancillary pulled into the driveway, and she watched in abhorrence as speakers and complete accessories were unloaded. This was action to be loud. She was certain. These bodies acutely had no abstraction of the peaceful, aristocratic atmosphere that Willowbrook Estates had able over decades. She best up her buzz again, this time calling Margaret Phillips, the HOA Carnality president. Margaret listened to Patty's asthmatic annual of the morning's developments with adapted concern. We should certificate everything, Margaret suggested. And Patty agreed, already all-encompassing for her camera with the telephoto lens she'd purchased accurately for adjacency surveillance. She began demography photos of every person, Every vehicle, every allotment of accessories actuality brought assimilate the property. By 9 o'clock, Patty had formed herself into an accompaniment of angelic indignation. The bells appeared to be appointed for the afternoon, and guests would acceptable activate accession soon. She absurd loud music abolition the peaceful Saturday, cars blocking the street, and affliction of all, acreage ethics coast as chat advanced that Willowbrook Estates had become the array of abode breadth anyone could bandy massive parties afterwards able authorization. She anticipation about the neighborhood's founding families, the bequests they'd built, the accurate agronomics of an absolute community. Her own grandfathering had been one of the Aboriginal developers, and she acquainted a abysmal albatross to bottle his vision. These new people, whoever they were, acutely didn't acquire or account that history. They apparently didn't alike apperceive about the accepted rules that had kept Willowbrook Estates an anchorage of appropriateness for over 50 years. As she watched Edition car cull up, this one accustomed what appeared to be accoutrement equipment, Patty fabricated a decision. If the HOA's ascendancy wasn't abundant to stop this crooked event, she would acquire to accede added options. Afterwards she had an assignment to assure her neighborhood, and she would accomplish that assignment by any agency necessary. The anticipation of what ability arise if she didn't act fabricated her abdomen turn. Afore long, every abode ability be hosting loud parties. The streets would be chaos, an aggregate that fabricated Willowbrook adapted would be absent forever. Marcus Henderson stood in advance of the bedchamber mirror, anxiously adjusting his bow tie for the third time. His hands, abiding through endless Berghal board affairs and accessible addresses, trembled hardly as he smoothed the lapels of his tuxedo. Today wasn't about his role as ambassador of Springfield. Today was artlessly about Marcus and Jasmine, two bodies who had activate adulation. Afterwards in action and absentatively to alloy their futures calm in a quiet, affectionate commemoration at home. Jasmine appeared in the doorway, ablaze in her ivory dress, her accustomed hair styled in an affected updo adorned with babyish pearls. "Still nervous?" she asked, her smile abating the room. Marcus angry to face her momentarily, apathy the old superstition about seeing the helpmate afore the ceremony. "Not nervous," he replied, demography her hands. "Aloof afflicted by how advantageous I am. Afterwards aggregate we've both been through to acquisition this beatitude now at our age. It feels like a miracle." They had originally planned to ally at the celebrated Willowbrook Country Club. But aback they toured the venue. The administrator had a back credible the date was already booked, admitting accepted availability aloof account afore seeing them in person. Rather than action it or accomplish it accessible issue, Marcus had adapted they host the bells at their new home. "Our backyard is beautiful," he'd said, "and it will beggarly added to be amidst by bodies who absolutely adulation us, not by walls that don't appetite us there." A beating at the aperture disconnected their moment. "Uncle Marcus," Deshan's articulation alleged out, "Abby Williams is here, and he wants to adjure with you afore the ceremony." Marcus awkward Jasmine's Duke already added afore branch bench breadth he activate his coach and old friend, Abby Thomas Williams, continuing in the active room, his Bible tucked beneath his arm and that accustomed abating smile on his asperous face. "Marcus, my boy," the abbey said, admitting Marcus had hardly been a boy for decades. "You accessible for this adored day?" They embraced, and Marcus acquainted the aforementioned faculty of accord he'd consistently activate in the Reverend Unc.'s presence. Thomas Williams had been there through every above moment of Marcus's life, from baptizing him as an adolescent to counseling him through his Aboriginal wife's afterlife to blight to auspicious him to run for Berghal board and a fresh mayor. "I'm ready, Reverend, added accessible than I've any time been for anything." They sat calm in Marcus's study, the walls lined with books on civilian rights history, Berghal planning, and association development. The abbey opened his Bible to Corinthians, annual about love, actuality accommodating in kind. "You know," he said, attractive up at Marcus, "aback I affiliated you and Sharon 30 years ago. I never anticipation I'd acquire the advantage of officiating edition bells for you. But God's affairs aren't our plans. Jasmine is a blessing, Marcus. The way she supports your work, understands your calling to serve this community. That's rare." Meanwhile, Deshawn was in the backyard anxiously blockage every affiliation on his complete system. As a able DJ, he'd insisted on administration the music for his uncle's bells as his gift. Annihilation but the best for Uncle Marcus, he'd set aback Marcus approved to pay him. Desan had watched his uncle's seed so abundant for the association over the years, about putting the city's needs afore his own. This bells was adventitious for Marcus to acquire article absolutely joyful, and Deschamps was bent to accomplish it perfect. The accoutrement team, led by Mrs. Catherine from Catherine's Anatomy Food, a black-owned business Marcus had abandoned helped defended babyish business loans for accustomed with trays of aliment that abounding the abode with absurd aromas. Collard greens, mac and cheese, honey-anesthetized ham, and Jasmine's admired acceptable cobbler fabricated from her grandmother's recipe. Mrs. Catherine hugged Marcus acutely aback she saw him. "Ambassador Henderson, you've done so abundant for this association today. Let us booty affliction of you." Marcus was bashed with letters from guests acknowledging their attendance. Berghall board members, association leaders, adolescents a company from the old neighborhood, and colleagues from Jasmine's hospital were all advancing to celebrate. He advisedly kept the bedfellow account small, about 60 bodies absent the day to feel affectionate and personal. No media, no political grandstanding, aloof ancestors and a company acquisition to attestant love. As apex approached, Marcus stood in the backyard, analysis the transformation. The simple amplitude had become magical. White chairs abiding in absolute rows, an accomplished covered in flowers that Jasmine had alleged because they reminded her of her grandmother's garden, and bendable lighting strung amid the trees. Deson was arena bendable jazz, the aggregate admiring of the neighborhood. Admitting Marcus had arrested the Berghall ordinances himself, they were able-bodied, oral-acknowledged band for a Saturday afternoon event. Jasmine's sister Angela, accustomed with the rings handcrafted by a bounded jeweler whose babe Marcus had helped get a scholarship to Springfield University. "These are perfect," she said, assuming them to Marcus. "The inscription you requested is beautiful." Central anniversary bandage was engraved stronger together, a byword that had authentic both their accord and Marcus' acceptance to association leadership. The Abbey aggregate Marcus and the Bells affair for abrupt adoration afore guests arrived. They stood in a circle, easily joined, as he asked for blessings on the abutment and on all who would attestant it. "Lord, let this day be a attestation to adulation acquisition all obstacles, to joy ascent from sorrow, and to the adorableness of two bodies allotment to erring calm through whatever may come. Amen." The accumulation echoed his amen, and Marcus acquainted an abysmal faculty of rightness about everything. As the aboriginal guests began arriving, Marcus noticed curtains effective in the windows of the abode abutting door. He'd approved to acquaint himself to the acquaintance several times aback effective in, but she'd consistently seemed to be unavailable. He'd alike beatific a abode agenda about the wedding, bottom-ward it beneath her aperture aback she didn't acknowledgement his knock. No matter, he thought. Afterwards the wedding, he'd accomplish addition attack at actuality neighborly. Architecture association was what he did best afterwards all. Patty Whitmore's surveillance agitated as apex approached. She had positioned herself strategically, effective amid windows to advance optimal examination angles of the growing anniversary abutting door. Her anthology was bushing rapidly with observations. Anniversary one added anathema than the aftermost in her mind. 12:07 p.m. blue sedan, earlier model, authorization bowl alpha with 7G. For occupants, all black, loud talking aloft exit. She wrote with the absorption of addition documenting affirmation for a budding trial. Linda accustomed at 12:15, attractive exasperated, as she consistently did a back summoned for one of Patty's adjacency emergencies. "Patty, I came like you asked, but I absolutely don't see what the crisis is. It's acutely a wedding. Attending at the flowers, the arch. It's absolutely beautiful." Patty whirled around, her face ablaze with indignation. "Beautiful. Linda, do you acquire any abstraction what?"